everybody, I'm Clarity, and this time around, I'm talking about Gakuen Heaven, a harem anime based on a dating sim. Guys, where are you going? Guys? So, Gakuen Heaven is about a boy named Keita who, despite being painfully average with no special talents whatsoever, received a special invitation to go to a special academy full of handsome men. Guys, really, where are you going? Don't leave me here! As he tries to get used to the school and understand why he was invited in the first place, Keita gets to meet all the handsome men of Belle Liberty Academy, which is abbreviated as BL Academy. Subtle, guys. Real subtle. Meanwhile, there seemed to be some sinister plots afoot, especially after an accident that had occurred as Keita was first heading towards the school. Particularly mysterious is a student named Kazuki, who is both unusually fond of Keita and seems to be hiding a few secrets of his own. Okay, so it's not a big mystery for the viewer when actually watching the show, but we'll get there. Since I already mentioned these so-called handsome men, I might as well start with the characters, especially because there's kind of a lot. I already mentioned the main character and his love interest, but then we have Hideaki and Tetsuya, who I presume bond over their mutual interest in making the most evil smirks possible. Jin, the character that you know must be hiding something underneath all that general life advice. Kaoru and Omi, the latter being a closed-eyes character who actually opens his eyes every now and then. And also likes dramatic lighting.
Yukihiko, the bi guy who flirts with and can't help himself around anyone that he deems to be his type.
Koji and Takuto, who do archery and art respectively. That's about it. Shinsuke, who's probably a vampire, but even if he's not, I don't trust anyone with teeth like that. Wataru and Kakeru, the tsundere twins who definitely don't grow attached to Keita, they swear. Satoshi, the teacher who has the objectively best pet. And finally, Keiji, who you know is the bad guy because he makes faces like this. Yeah, it's a lot. Now, they're all introduced pretty early, so they all get a decent chunk of screen time to get the audience used to them, but that doesn't change the fact that it's too much for a 13-episode show. Not to mention that these two look a little too similar and I can see people mistaking them for the same person. It's not that all of these other characters serve no purpose to the plot, but the amount of them would probably be better suited for a show with double the length. As for the main character specifically, he's okay. Keita is pretty standard for a self-conscious protagonist, though he does have his moments where he gets to step out and be his own thing. Aside from having the perfect height and hair for potential head pats, he seems to be designed to be vulnerable enough for the other characters to grow attached to him, and that works well enough. I like how self-admittedly average he is actually plays into him sort of gaining a special skill of his own, in that he brings everyone else together and inspires them. Unfortunately though, his main problem comes from the fact that he has either vague memories of his childhood or has trouble immediately remembering them. This causes quite a few moments where he's staring off into space, swearing that something is familiar, but can't put his finger on it. He's also kept out of the loop on multiple occasions, so if one isn't a fan of that or the memory issue, I wouldn't recommend this anime at all. Kazuki is on the opposite side of things, where he's aware, or at least tries to be aware, of everything that's going on. He's actually a really nice character, which surprises me as someone who's so used to the love interest being harsh towards the protagonist for the sake of comedy. It's just so refreshing, as even the moments where he's annoyed by Yukihiko's advances on Keita are played strictly for comedy, and the one moment where he lies about having plans with Keita also has him apologizing for it. Though it might be questionable exactly how much older he is than Keita, he has an undeniable devotion to him, and it's interesting to see the childhood friend, with a not-so-subtle hint of mom friend, be the final choice in the end. And I admit, Keita and Kazuki are legitimately cute together. They don't get too many fluffy moments given the abundance of other characters, but it does make me happy seeing them interact, especially since they get their kiss by the end of the show. That's not to say that the romance is perfect, but I'm weak and they're sweet to each other. The other characters are all pretty fine personality-wise, with some conflicts here and there for me. Hideaki is delightfully smug, teasing, and violent, even doing the things with his glasses, you know, thing.
But he's also a massive weirdo.
There's a particularly bizarre scene where he licks Keita's elbow after Keita had hurt it, and no. Tetsuya is a pretty typical cool guy, but he's also really nice and does the thing when he takes his motorcycle helmet off. I probably would have been rooting for him to get Keita if it weren't for Kazuki, but this isn't a place for shipping discourse.
This is a friendly place. We're not getting into this.
Speaking of romantic interests, I am so glad that Yukihiko wasn't the main love interest and was just used as a side thing for comedy purposes. With his attempts at non-consensual kisses and insistence that he and Kate are meant to be, comedic moments are probably best for him without getting into deeper themes. Wataru and Kakeru are mildly annoying since they do that repeat what the other said thing, and they don't really do much beyond being antagonists, but their presence is thankfully brief. They serve to be some of the few characters who are angered by Keita going to the school, which I guess is a necessary thing to touch on? Anyway, outside of those I just mentioned, none of the other characters particularly stand out, at least in ways I can mention without spoiling big parts of this weird show. Oh, did I say weird? Well, transition, because this show is weird! Let's start with the fact that the chairman doesn't show his face around the academy, and even to staff who have seen his face, he occasionally lets himself be represented by a blue bear plush that has a voice. This bear also gives an announcement to the whole academy later and even has a giant blimp version of itself. Then, there are images that pop up before and after where breaks would be, and while some are pretty risque, they're mostly just the characters doing things. They're so incredibly random and often have nothing to do with anything. If that wasn't bizarre enough, for those who actually bother sticking around past the credits, they'll be greeted by shorts going by the title of Ham Ham Heaven, in which all the human characters are hamsters. Surprisingly though, the plots themselves aren't weird, even taking themselves fairly seriously. The only exception is episode 5, which has a great setup but a really disappointing payoff, being the only episode that I would say is skippable without missing anything noteworthy. I mean, okay, the ending is technically important, but it doesn't establish anything that a viewer wouldn't already have guessed. It just makes me feel bad for the characters when they did literally nothing wrong. And despite some of the transitions I mentioned and a few scenes that go with the "it sounds like they're doing something, but they're not" joke, the anime is strangely harmless. Yeah, that's what I'd call it. Harmless. Aside from one character that gets off a little too easily for my tastes, none of the plot-relevant scenes raise any red flags that would cause me to go into a rant. Kate is left in the dark by Kazuki, sure, but Kazuki does have his reasons, however flimsy they may seem, and he does feel legitimately bad for keeping things from Keita. It's strange. For an anime that doesn't seem to have a magical thing called money put into it, I wouldn't call it bad. At worst, it's a little slow, with many shots of the characters simply staring at each other. This likely enforces the feeling that nothing is happening, even though there are actual plots going on in the background. While it does take a few paths and jokes that I expected, it also held half an episode in a bathhouse and not only did nothing sexual and obvious about it, but turned it into a mystery about a toothbrush, which I just... Gosh! Serious props for the self-control there. Tetsuya had me all worried with a line about naked socializing, but my expectations were thankfully subverted. And that's honestly it. Yeah, there's not much to say about this anime. Too many characters, certainly, but they're overall harmless. I wish the gay was a little more pronounced, but I can't really complain since it hits all the right notes and the two are very clearly affectionate. Biggest flaw comes from potential frustration of Keita being constantly out of the loop, but I think anyone watching this should be able to guess if that will be enough of a problem to skip out on the anime completely. Not exactly recommending it, because I honestly think some cuts could do it a lot of good, both scene-wise and character-wise, but it's not bad. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm used to anime where the main character is a punching bag, and this one has the side characters practically rally around the main character instead. I'm refreshed, yet weirded out, yet pleased, yet... yeah. This is a weird ending for a review. Bye, so long, see ya!